The night Damien Cade rejected Elena Voss, the moon was full and blood-red, and every wolf in Blackthorn pack stood witness. He had called her forward at the blood moon ceremony, the night every alpha announced his chosen Luna before the pack. Elena had walked to the platform with her heart pounding, certain of what everyone already knew. The mate bond between them had been confirmed months earlier. Her wolf had recognized his the very first time their eyes met. But Damien did not say her name. He said Priya Renshaw's. The crowd gasped. Elena felt the bond inside her chest twist and tear, a pain no human words could describe, like something living had been ripped out of her without warning. She did not cry out. She did not beg. She stood there in front of hundreds of pack members, while Damien explained, in a voice that barely shook, that Priya's family controlled trade routes and warriors Blackthorn needed, and that a Luna chosen for love was a luxury an alpha could not always afford. Elena did not wait for him to finish. She turned, walked down from the platform, and left the territory before sunrise. She took nothing with her but the clothes on her back and the broken place in her chest where the bond used to live. 5 years passed. Damien's marriage to Priya was everything he expected and nothing he wanted. She had married him for the crown, not for him, and she made sure he understood the difference every single day. There was no warmth between them, no partnership, only cold arrangements and colder silences. When Priya finally left 2 years into the marriage, taking a political position within the neighboring Ashvale kingdom, Damien did not mourn her leaving. He mourned, quietly and privately, the woman he had let walk away first. He told himself many times that he had made the right choice for his pack. He told himself the ache in his chest was simply the price of leadership. But some nights, when the moon was full, he swore he could still feel the faintest thread of a bond that should have died the moment he chose someone else. It never fully vanished. It only went quiet, like an ember refusing to go out, no matter how much cold was poured over it. Blackthorn grew stronger under his rule, but Damien grew colder. He rarely smiled. He rarely spoke unless it concerned pack business. His advisors worried about him, though none dared say so aloud. The alpha, who once had warmth in his eyes, had become a wall of duty and control, and everyone assumed that was simply who he now was. Then came the summons from Ashvale Kingdom. Regional power had shifted. A new ruler had risen in Ashvale, one strong enough that even Blackthorn could not ignore the invitation to renegotiate their long-standing border treaty. Damien expected a room full of unfamiliar diplomats and perhaps a young royal eager to prove themselves. He prepared his best advisors, rehearsed his arguments, and told himself this was simply another political matter to be handled efficiently. He was not prepared for the doors of the Ashvale throne room to open and reveal Elena. Not the girl who had once stood shaking on his platform, not the woman who had walked away with nothing 5 years ago. This Elena wore a crown that caught the light like fire, and she sat upon the Ashvale throne with the ease of someone who had been born to rule, though Damien knew she had not been. Her spine was straight, her expression unreadable, her eyes sharp with an intelligence that had not been there before, or perhaps had always been there, and simply never had the chance to be seen. "Alpha Cade," she said, and her voice did not waver even slightly. "Welcome to Ashvale." Damien's wolf recognized her instantly, the way it always had. But this time, the recognition was met with something colder from her side. He felt nothing reaching back toward him. Where a mate bond should have stirred between them, there was only silence, as if she had built a wall so strong that even fate could not cross it. He learned her story slowly, through careful questioning of Ashvale's court, since Elena herself offered nothing personally. After leaving Blackthorn, she had wandered without direction for weeks, injured in both body and spirit, until she collapsed near the Ashvale border. The dying king of Ashvale, a man without an heir and without patience for weak successors, had taken her in, not out of charity, but because he recognized in her broken eyes something he valued more than blood ties, the will to survive, no matter what was taken from her. He trained her himself. In diplomacy, in combat, in the brutal politics of ruling a kingdom surrounded by rivals. Elena did not simply survive those years. She transformed. By the time the old king passed, the court had already come to respect her enough that naming her his heir caused barely a ripple of resistance. She had earned her crown, one difficult day at a time, without a single soul handing it to her. Damien sat through the treaty negotiations, struggling to reconcile the composed queen before him with the trembling girl he had once discarded. Every time he tried to speak to her privately, to invoke the bond they both knew still existed somewhere beneath the surface, Elena redirected the conversation back to trade routes and border patrols, with the calm efficiency of someone entirely unmoved. "The bond means nothing to me anymore," she told him plainly, during one private audience he had all but demanded. "A queen cannot afford old wounds reopening in the middle of a treaty. Whatever you felt 5 years ago, Damien, you made your choice. I have made mine since." Her words cut deeper than any physical wound could have, but Damien noticed something she likely did not intend for him to see. Whenever their eyes met for longer than a moment, her breath caught, just barely. Whenever he stood close enough, her hands stilled instead of continuing their usual purposeful movements. The bond was not gone. She had simply learned, through 5 years of necessity, how to silence it. He decided, in that moment, that if silence was the only thing standing between them, he would spend however long it took, proving to her that he deserved to be heard again. The treaty negotiations stretched across several weeks, giving Damien more time in Ashvale than he had originally planned. He used every meeting, every formal dinner, every accidental crossing of paths in the palace corridors, to show Elena a version of himself he hoped she might recognize as sincere. He did not ask for forgiveness outright. He knew better than to expect that so easily. Instead, he listened. He asked about her kingdom's needs instead of only Blackthorn's demands. He admitted, quietly, that the years since the ceremony had taught him exactly how much he had thrown away that night. Elena remained guarded, but she was not cruel. She allowed him small moments of honesty, watching him carefully as if testing whether his change was real or simply another negotiation tactic. She had learned, painfully, not to trust easily, and Damien understood that every guarded response from her was a wound he himself had caused. One evening, walking along the palace gardens after a long council session, Elena finally allowed herself to ask the question that had clearly haunted her for years. "Why Priya?" she asked, not looking at him. "Was it truly only about alliances? Or was there something about me that made the choice easier than it should have been?" Damien stopped walking. The honest answer had haunted him longer than he cared to admit. "There was nothing wrong with you," he said quietly. "I was afraid that loving someone as deeply as I loved you would make me weak in front of a pack that expected strength above everything else. I told myself the alliance mattered more, but the truth is, I was a coward standing in front of hundreds of people, and I let that fear cost me the one thing that could have made me stronger than any alliance ever could." Elena said nothing for a long moment. The silence between them was heavy, filled with 5 years of unspoken pain, but for the first time since his arrival, she did not immediately shut the conversation down. She simply nodded, once, and continued walking, leaving Damien with the smallest, most fragile sense of hope he had allowed himself in years. But peace within Ashvale's court was not as settled as it appeared. A faction of nobles, resentful that a woman without royal blood now sat upon their throne, had been quietly plotting for months to remove her by any means necessary. They viewed the treaty negotiations with Blackthorn as the perfect opportunity, believing that chaos during a diplomatic summit would provide enough confusion to act without immediate suspicion falling on them. The attack came during the final banquet of the summit, when the Great Hall was filled with representatives from both kingdoms. Elena stood to give a closing toast to the newly finalized treaty when a group of disguised attackers moved through the crowd, weapons hidden until the last possible second. Damien's wolf reacted before his mind fully processed the danger. He moved through the crowd faster than anyone in the room, placing himself between Elena and the nearest attacker without a moment's hesitation, without calculating political consequences, without thinking of anything except the woman he refused to lose a second time. He fought with a ferocity born not of duty, but of desperation, taking a blade meant for her, across his shoulder, and barely registering the pain. Ashvale's own guards moved quickly once the initial shock passed, subduing the remaining attackers within minutes. But the damage to the illusion of peace had already been done. Elena knelt beside Damien as he pressed a hand to his wound. her carefully maintained composure finally cracking as fear for him overtook the careful control she had built over 5 long years. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered, her hands trembling as she helped steady him. "I did," Damien said, wincing but managing a small, honest smile. "I would do it every time, Elena. Not because of politics, not because of alliances, because somewhere in me, the bond never actually died. I just spent 5 years too afraid to admit it out loud." Elena stared at him, something shifting visibly behind her eyes, years of walls beginning to show the first genuine cracks since his arrival. She did not say the words he hoped for. She was not ready, not yet. And both of them understood that healing after such deep betrayal could not happen in a single night, no matter how dramatic the circumstances. But she did not pull her hand away from his. In the days that followed, as Damien recovered under the careful watch of Ashvale's healers, Elena visited him more often than protocol strictly required. Their conversations grew longer, quieter, filled with the slow, careful rebuilding of trust, rather than dramatic declarations. She told him about the nights she had nearly given up during her early training, and he told her about the emptiness of ruling a pack while feeling utterly alone despite being surrounded by people. Neither of them rushed toward forgiveness. Both of them understood it had to be earned, not simply given because fate had once tied them together. When the time came for Damien to return to Blackthorn, the treaty firmly secured and peace between the two territories, stronger than it had been in generations, Elena walked with him to the palace gates. She did not offer him promises of reunion, and she did not pretend the past 5 years could be erased simply because he had proven himself in a single dramatic moment. "I am not the girl who left Blackthorn anymore," she told him, her crown catching the morning light as she spoke. "I will not simply return to being your Luna, because the bond still exists. If you want a future with me, Damien, you will have to keep proving, every single day, that the man standing before me now is not the same man who chose someone else in front of everyone I loved." Damien nodded, understanding completely, and for the first time since the night of the blood moon ceremony, he felt something close to genuine hope rather than desperate longing. "Then I will spend as long as it takes," he said. "Not because the bond demands it, but because I choose you, freely, every single day from now on." Elena allowed herself a small, careful smile, the first true smile he had seen from her since his arrival in Ashvale. "Then perhaps," she said quietly, "we will see, in time, whether choices made with an open heart can undo the damage of choices made out of fear." She did not promise him forever. She did not promise him anything certain at all. But as Damien turned to make the long journey back to his own territory, he carried with him something he had not felt in 5 long years, the quiet, steady belief that some bonds, however deeply wounded, were worth the patience it took to heal them properly, one honest day at a time.